Chapter 40, The Israeli Connection. On May 13, 1991, an unusual news item came across the wires at the Jerusalem Post. Ari's first reaction was to dismiss it as simply bizarre. The more he thought about it, however, the more intrigued he became. Late that afternoon, after some intensive research, Ari walked into the office of his editor, Ruta Cohen, and sat down to discuss his findings with her. "What's on your mind, Ari? On to a scoop?" "I know that look," said Ruta, when Ari had settled himself in a chair in front of her desk. Adjusting the oversized silver-rimmed glasses that lent her rather tall and very lean frame a scholarly look, the editor fixed Ari with the direct and piercing gaze that intimidated most of those under her. "Don't laugh," said Ari tentatively, knowing Ruta well enough to suspect she might reject his proposal immediately. "I'm intrigued by that item on the wire today about the Pope. Refresh my memory. I've been busy." "Well, today in Fatima, Portugal, the Pope put a diamond necklace on a small statue of Our Lady of Fatima, and in the necklace was one of the bullets that Mehmet Ali Agca, the Turkish gunman, pumped into the Pope's body exactly 10 years ago. You know, the assassination attempt." "Why the necklace? And why the bullet in it? By the way, would you like some coffee? Or something else to drink?" Ari shook his head. "No, I'm fine. It was because the Pope is convinced that Our Lady of Fatima saved his life, and this was one way of thanking her." Ruta waved her secretary away. "He's serious?" she asked. "Very definitely." "And you were thinking of doing a feature on it?" "Do it? No mercy. Do it." Ruta was a colonel in the reserves and ran her department as though it were part of the Israeli army and the country was at war. Ari, however, felt perfectly at ease with this imposing woman, one of the few staff members who did. She, in turn, respected him for his ability to stand up to her. "Actually, I think there's something to the story," Ari countered. "You do?" That seemed to be a thought entirely outside the bounds Ruta had set on the possible, but now that Ari had stated it without backing down, she was willing to reconsider. He knew her as a very reasonable person if one had convictions and the courage and ability to substantiate them. Otherwise, she was like a tank rolling over the opposition. "If you remember the background, it's rather intriguing." "I vaguely recall," responded Ruta thoughtfully, "that the assassination attempt occurred on the anniversary of the first appearance of Our Lady of Fatima." "Yes, she first appeared on the same date, May 12th in 1917, interjected Ari. "Right. Probably a coincidence. No one could prove it wasn't. And so what? If that were the whole story, I'd agree with you and make a good satire out of it, which my readers expect from me now and then," returned Ari respectfully. "But there's a lot more to it. I've been researching it all day, and the more I've dug out, the more intriguing it's become." "Go on." "There are so many alleged appearances of the Virgin Mary all over the world. Even if most of the apparitions are written off as hallucinations, there's still a core that can't be explained away." "Sounds like what the kooks say about UFOs." "Not just the kooks. That's too simplistic. Some of the most credible researchers have pointed out similarities between UFO appearances and the apparitions of Mary." "That doesn't impress me. Next you'll be saying she rides in UFOs. "That's not the point. Let me remind you that in this woman the Roman Catholic Church has a secret weapon with a powerful worldwide appeal, even to non-Catholics. Something that fits the mood of the times. You know, feminism, women's lib, goddess worship." "I wouldn't call virginity very popular," came the quick response. Knowing Ruta, Ari took that sarcastic remark as a warning sign and hurried on. "Let me finish. There's much more. The Pope believes in many of these apparitions of Mary and is devoted to her in their various forms, like the Black Virgin of Jasna Gora, that sort of thing. She's been the patron saint and protectress of Poland for 600 years. The Poles really believe that. The Pope's going to lead a huge pilgrimage to Jasna Gora in August. They expect more than 1 million, mostly young people, from around the world. Pretty impressive, right? Millions have visited Medjugorje, you know, Yugoslavia, where the Virgin supposedly appears every day. These apparitions have a huge following." Ruta was now drumming impatiently on the desk with her fingers. It was her way of saying that the subject matter hadn't caught her interest, and the interview was about to end. "Look, you can't just brush this off," insisted Ari. "The Pope is the most highly respected world leader today. He's consulted by Bush, Gorbachev, and a host of others like Arafat. You've got to take this man seriously. You can't just dismiss his beliefs as ludicrous." Ruta gave Ari a "you can't be serious" look. "You mean you have to accept all that the Pope believes and become a Catholic just because he's a highly respected world leader?" Ari leaned back in his chair and laughed. "Very funny. Of course not. These appearances are something specific, unique. They're not dogmas pronounced by the Church. They're events that either happened or didn't. Something caused millions of people to think they happened. And if they did, then it seems to me we've got something here worth investigating." Ruta stopped drumming and placed her hands in her lap. "Okay, convince me." On that day 10 years ago, as the Pope was moving along through the crowd, he noticed a young girl with a pendant around her neck. It held a small picture of Our Lady of Fatima. He leaned over to bless her. Wham! 2 bullets that would have killed him tore through empty space where his head had just been. A lucky coincidence. "That's what I would have said. But there's more," persisted Ari. "While he was convalescing from the assassination attempt, the Pope had a personal visitation from Our Lady of Fatima. She gave him a sign and promised that one day, in the not-too-distant future, she'd give a spectacular sign to the entire world that would cause mankind to recognize and submit to the Pope's supreme spiritual authority." "Too incredible for belief," said Ruta brusquely. "Agreed, and that's why it's so intriguing, because the Pope obviously believes it completely, and I still say he's too credible a world leader to dismiss this as nonsense. I don't think he's hallucinating. As for the world recognizing his spiritual authority, Gorbachev, he's an avowed atheist, already has. He introduced the Pope as the highest spiritual authority on the earth to his wife, Raisa." Ruta turned her swivel chair to one side and stared out the window in silence. That was a good sign. It indicated that she was thinking seriously about the proposition. "And remember," Ari hurried on, "whether something is true or reasonable doesn't matter as long as millions think they have some basis, no matter how bizarre, for believing it. Listen to this. Our Lady of Fatima said that if the popes would dedicate Russia to her Immaculate Heart, she'd convert Russia and turn back the tide of communism from taking over the world. Now, who do you think is getting the credit for bringing down the Berlin Wall, delivering Eastern Europe from communism, and breaking up the Soviet Union? That's ludicrous. You think so, and so do I. But if millions of people believe it, that gives it tremendous power to mold opinion." Ruta was still looking out the window, apparently lost in thought. At last, she asked the inevitable question. "Where's the relevance to Israel?" "The Israeli connection is rather ominous. As you know, the Catholic Church has never recognized the right of Israel to exist. In fact, it's been our secret and extremely powerful enemy. I don't have to persuade you of that." Ruta swung around in her chair to fix Ari with a skeptical look. "And you think these apparitions of Mary have something to do with that? Come on." "Let me finish. Syria's Hafez Assad insists that ETIs and UFOs are going to establish peace in the Middle East. And according to the experts, as I've already said, there's a relationship between UFOs and apparitions of Mary. The Vatican, which promotes Mary, takes the side of the Arab nations against Israel." "Too tenuous," interrupted Ruta forcefully. "We couldn't print something like that." "You still haven't let me finish. Millions of people are convinced that they've seen UFOs and apparitions of Our Lady of this or that. Do you admit that?" Ruta nodded. "They think they have." "That's all that's necessary," argued Ari. "They only have to believe they've seen something inexplicable or supernatural. It's not inconceivable that whatever is the source of these signs, which have convinced millions that UFOs exist and that Mary is appearing, might also produce a far greater sign that would convince hundreds of millions perhaps even billions of people around the world. Ruta again gazed out the window. Ari continued, "And if it happens, it could be very bad if the sign the world receives seems to favor the Arab and the Catholic opposition to Israel. Who says there'll be a sign? Suppose there isn't, and I don't think there will be." "This is where the plot thickens," said Ari, rushing on before he lost her. "Fatima was the name of Muhammad's favorite daughter. He said before his death that she would be the highest lady in heaven, except for the Virgin Mary." Ruta turned to face Ari. "I wasn't aware of that," she said. "So Our Lady of Fatima has a special appeal for Muslims." For the first time since he'd begun sharing his idea, Ruta's eyes had that bloodhound look. She was at last on the scent of something worthwhile. "You've got it. Listen to this," continued Ari. "I've been watching reports coming across the wire about the reception the statue of Our Lady of Fatima gets among the Muslims in Africa and India. They come out by the hundreds of thousands and bow down and worship her. And in a popular book way back in 1952, a highly regarded Catholic bishop, Fulton J. Sheen, I think it was, predicted that it would be Our Lady of Fatima who would unite the Muslims and the Catholics worldwide." Ruta stood to her feet abruptly. Ari did the same. "I'm still not convinced," she said, then added grudgingly, "but I think you may be onto something worth exploring. Go ahead and do some more research and let me know what you come up with." That night, intrigued by his new project, Ari worked later than usual. It was such a beautiful evening that he decided to walk all the way to Jakob's apartment instead of riding the bus. It would take him less than an hour, and he needed the exercise. The weather had turned hot recently, but with darkness settling and a moderate breeze blowing up from the Mediterranean, the temperature was dropping, and the evening was now very pleasant. It was more than a year since Ari had arrived in Jerusalem. He had to confess that the city had grown on him. It had a vitality, a sense of expectancy, of being on the verge of something exciting that he had never experienced anywhere else in his years of traveling the world. Darkness had descended, and the streetlights had come on by the time Ari, coming down Shlom Zion Hamalka Street, reached the junction and turned onto Mamila. Crossing the Hinnom Valley, he thrilled to the sight of the Jaffa Gate, straight ahead. David's Tower rose on the right, and the parapeted city wall, dating back to Crusader times, stretched out on either side. With the floodlights illuminating it, the ancient wall looked unreal, like a giant movie set. As he approached, it loomed above him in timeless beauty. Choosing not to use the Jaffa Gate, he wanted to avoid the Arab quarter, Ari proceeded to his right along a narrow path that zigzagged its way up Mount Zion. Reaching the base of the ancient wall, he joined a broad walkway that would take him into the old city through the Zion Gate, still pockmarked with bullet holes from the Six-Day War of 1967. Ari had not gone far along the deserted promenade when he noticed the familiar figure standing in the shadow of the Armenian monastery about 50 feet ahead, obviously waiting for him. As he drew closer, Ari felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. There was no doubt that it was Elor, but this time appearing as an Arab in flowing white robe and Bedouin kafia, such as he might encounter at the sheep gate of the old city. "So, my friend," the mysterious entity began when Ari reached him, "you're going to devote one of your columns to apparitions of Mary. Does it disturb you that I know everything, even your most secret thoughts?" "Easy," continued Elor quietly in response to Ari's speechless anger. "You forget that we're billions of years ahead of you on the evolutionary scale, so your private thoughts are of no interest to us, unless, of course, they oppose our plans for the good of this project." "And do your plans involve Our Lady of Fatima?" asked Ari, getting control of his outraged feelings. It was frustrating to be at such a disadvantage in a contest of wits. In fact, it was no contest. "It was I who appeared at Fatima as Mary," responded Elor matter-of-factly. "Yes, Our Lady of Fatima will play an important role in the transformation of consciousness that mankind must experience for peace to reign. But all of this will become clear to you in exactly 2 years and 1 month. That is when you will arrive at a secret location near Palo Alto, California, for a historic event, and you will not see me again until after that trip has been successfully completed." "California?" asked Ari cautiously. Then Aylor knew everything. "Are you referring to the mission the Mossad's sending me on?" Aylor's laugh sent the hair rising on the back of Ari's neck again. "Let them think they are sending you. It is to the same place and at the same time that we have planned. You will do our bidding, and you will find that it will coincide with their objective. You will be able, as an eyewitness, to tell the Mossad all that they want to know." Ari was speechless. Could the Nine really predict the future? Perhaps even make it happen? Aylor had hinted at that in the past, but never had he been so specific as now. Aylor put his hand on Ari's shoulder. "You wonder whether I really know the future. I'll give you a sign. The Israelis and Arabs will come to the peace table for face-to-face talks before the end of this coming October, and they will do so in Madrid. In December, the talks will move to Washington, D.C. Ari could only stare at Aylor in wide-eyed bewilderment. "You may confidently make that prediction in your column in the Post, if you wish," continued Aylor. "However, I would not advise it." "So you're not certain?" "On the contrary. But how would you explain yourself?" "Why should I?" "You would be asked. And if you have no reason, then even when it happened, it would be nothing more than a lucky guess." "Of course," responded Ari after a moment's hesitation. "The sign I have given shows our deep interest in Israel reaching a peaceful settlement with its neighbors. In fact, we are the ones who will bring it to pass." "So there will be a peace agreement between Israel and the Arabs?" "Eventually, but no more about that now." Ari struggled to make sense of what Aylor seemed to be saying. "Are you telling me that you somehow guide human history?" "Not entirely. That was our plan. But like yourself, most human beings are stubborn and don't accept guidance readily. They can only learn the hard way, and some never learn." "Give me an example of your influence," Ari challenged him. Aylor smiled and released his grip on Ari's shoulder. "There are so many lies. Religion is such a fraud. Our plans to transform this earth have been frustrated by selfish religious leaders who keep their followers in bondage by promising them a mythical heaven." Ari nodded. "I agree. Buddhists are closest to the truth. The Muslims are somewhat further from it. The worst delusions came through those who call themselves Christians. Christianity quickly became a complete perversion of the original teaching of the Christ before he rebelled. The primordial pagan religions had been far closer. This ancient wisdom would have been lost with the coming of the science that accompanies your so-called advancements of civilization. So we inspired the formation of many secret societies, such as the Freemasons and Rosicrucians, to preserve the ancient mysteries until the day when the power of the gods would pass to men and a new age would dawn." Aylor took Ari by the arm and gently propelled him forward. "Come, my friend, let us walk together." Ari obeyed as in a dream, perplexed beyond words. There was silence for a few paces. Then Aylor continued. "The Emperor Constantine followed much of our guidance, blending Christianity, which had wandered so far astray, back into the mainstream of paganism. It became known as Roman Catholicism. For peace to prevail on earth, all religions must yet be united under one head, and we have chosen the Vatican to be the headquarters. The present Pope is on the right path. Mary is the key. The genuine apparitions are appearances of one of the nine and will yet play a major role in effecting religious unity. Your interest in this subject indicates that you, too, are on the right path." Ari shook his head in bewilderment. "You speak in riddles." Again that confident, all-knowing smile from Aylor. "It only seems so at this time. When you are in California and meet the one we have chosen to rule the new world order, you will begin to understand. He is a Jesuit. He will use the Roman Catholic Church and its Pope to effect worldwide unity of religion. And then, my friend, we have them." Aylor smiled. The worst roadblocks to peace are Christian fundamentalism and Zionism, continued Aylor. Both must be eliminated. Jerusalem is central to our plans. It must be internationalized, as the United Nations has already decreed, and as those stubborn Zionists oppose. The belief that Messiah will rule the world from the throne of King David in Jerusalem must be removed from Jewish consciousness. For that purpose you have been chosen. For one fleeting moment, Aylor's face revealed beneath the mocking smile a mask of unspeakable evil. Ari blinked, and Aylor was gone. That elusive expression on this mysterious being's face had been terrifying, but it faded from Ari's memory almost immediately, until he was no longer certain of what he had seen.